Broadcasting live from an Airstream somewhere in Tornado Alley, bringing you the people, places, and stories from the Panhandle to the Red River. This is your Only in Oklahoma show.
This is your captain speaking. Just wanted to let you know we're flying over Tulsa on our way to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and Planetarium. If you look out to your right, you can see it right there. We're circling around now. I wanted to take this time to tell you how much we appreciate you flying the friendly skies with the OnlyinOKShow Airlines, and enjoy the ride. I'm your Captain Brett, and joining me as always is my co-captain, pilot, and life partner.
I'm Harley. Oh my God.
So another trip into the great unknown.
It's going to be one of those shows, isn't it? Where just everything
It's
has
gonna
to be a one-liner or a zinger.
There may be turbulence, but we can edit that, right?
We can edit out the turbulence. I don't think that's how that works.
It has become abundantly clear to me that being a middle-aged father to a 5-month-old, almost 6-month-old, is extremely difficult. I've done a lot today. You ever had when you were hoping your kids fell asleep so you could?
Oh yeah, those
Minnie, I'm there, man. I'm there. I'm like looking at him going, you think what I'm thinking? He's like, no.
Only if you're thinking about screaming bloody murder.
Right? I'm telling you right now, I was talking to a physical therapist today. I tell everybody, this isn't my first rodeo, but my last rodeo was in 1999. That's a long time to be off a bucking bronco, man, and decide to get back on again. Could you do it again?
No.
Why?
Dude, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Like I've got a countdown clock. Like, come on, last kid, get out.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time, but it's a lot of fun. I've learned a lot about a lot of different things like sleep deprivation and is my house haunted, or am I just hallucinating because of lack of sleep?
Well, I think we might be able to get you away from that for a little bit.
Right.
Got a couple of tickets to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and Planetarium.
Hey.
And we've got that coming up right after this. So, Brett, you have a new deductible.
I do.
Has moved in recently.
Yes. And I'm stuck with it. Or he eventually he'll be stuck with me.
Do you understand fully the tax ramifications of a new child?
How do I learn more about this, Harley?
Well, one of the easiest ways to do that, Brett, would be to reach out to Holiday Tax Group for a free 30-minute consultation.
Absolutely. They've been around since 2010, and they, as always, offer military personnel, and teachers also get 20% off as well.
Give them a call today. It's 405-730-3100.
Or you can hit them up on the web at holidaytaxgroup.com. Holiday with 2 L's. Well, if you're headed to Tulsa, do it in a jet airplane, because you're headed to the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. Today, joining us is the executive director, Tonya Blansett. Tonya, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be part of your podcast.
And it took us only a half hour to get started, which is typical runway time if you're headed on an airplane anywhere these days, right?
It's right. It's your taxi time, right?
Yeah, taxi time's about. Absolutely. We're already in full simulation. So tell us about the museum. How did it get started?
Well, our founder, Lee Rainey, was inspired to have an air and space museum so that children would have a place to become inspired to follow STEM career pathways that are aviation focused. And so the museum began in 1994. It opened in 1996. That was in an old Spartan aviation hangar. And then our current building was built. And then now we have a new planetarium that was added in 2012. And we're looking again at expanding soon. So it's the best job I've ever had, and I absolutely love it. It's like going I don't even know how to describe it. Every day is a new day, and it's just a wonderful place to go.
So I think that most people would be surprised at the amount of aerospace industry that is in Oklahoma, that was founded in Oklahoma, that has ties to Oklahoma.
If you live here, you think Tinker Air Force Base, and of course the FAA being based here, but the aeronautical tradition, it's steeped in history here in Oklahoma, is it not?
Absolutely. So it can go all the way back to Wiley Post, and a lot of people might remember some history about Wiley Post because he and Will Rogers were great friends. They actually passed away in an airplane crash in Alaska, and they were together. You know, the funny thing about Wiley Post, he's from the Maysville area, which is where my grandmother lived. And I asked my grandmother one time if she knew Wiley Post, and she laughed, and she said, "Oh, that fool, he used to sell airplane rides for $1." You know, a lot of people don't realize, I think a lot of people recognize the name Charles Lindbergh.
Mm-hmm.
And Charles Lindbergh did amazing things.
Yes.
But he only got one ticker tape parade in New York City, while Wiley Post got two. Wiley Post discovered the jet stream. He built the first pressurized suit for high altitude flying. He did a lot of amazing, amazing things. And he did them from Oklahoma. In fact, he set the altitude flight record from the Bartlesville Airport. Starting with Wiley Post, and the history of aviation in Oklahoma is so rich. And if people take a moment just to drop by the museum, and you know, there's other great museums in the state too that also have things on aerospace history, because it is such an important part of our state. At the Air and Space Museum in Tulsa, we actually have some really cool pieces. In fact, when J. Paul Getty owned Spartan Aviation Company, it used to be located over on Sheridan. They just recently demolished the building earlier this year. In 1946, at the end of the war, he had converted that aircraft company to support the war effort in producing parts for airplanes, for warbirds. In 1946, the war was over, and they did a prototype for a new executive aircraft called the Spartan Executive Model 12. And they only made one, and when he finished the prototype, it was very expensive. They realized that the market was flooded with, you know, aircraft coming out of military duty. And so they switched over and started building campers. And right now, those campers, the Spartan campers, I believe they stopped making them in either 1964 or 65. I could be wrong, but around that era. And now they are very popular. People are renovating them. And in fact, next year, which is 2021, that is the 75th birthday of the Spartan Executive Model 12. It was the only one ever built, and we have it. And she is so beautiful. She just got all shined up and polished, and she is shiny silver. You can see a reflection when you look into the metal. In October of 2021, we're having the 75th anniversary. We're having a plane and trailer rally at the museum, and people with these renovated Spartan trailers are coming in from all over the country. And it's just going to be really exciting. So that's just one of our aircraft that we have that's just fabulous.
Well, you know, you mentioned J. Paul Getty, and he's gotten a lot of pub over the years. There have been a couple of movies based around his story a little bit. People forget, not only was he obviously an oil baron, but he had a huge hand in the aircraft industry in Oklahoma. And I think people forget about that because of a lot of the things that happened controversially outside of that.
Yeah, he really had a huge impact. I believe that he was probably the richest man in the world at one point. And Tulsa was the oil capital of the world at one point. So, you know, there's a lot of rich history throughout, you know, the last 100 years. And, you know, we still have the Spartan Aviation School and lots of other pilot schools in town. There's Tulsa Technology Center and the Riverside Airport, Jones Airport down on the southern end of town also has flight schools. So aviation is still really strong. Oklahoma also, out of all the places in the world, we have the largest military MRO, which is maintenance and repair facility at Tinker. And then we have the largest commercial maintenance facility at American Airlines at Tulsa. So, you know, it's really cool. Now, if you look back about the last 50 years, you know, we just got through celebrating anniversary of Apollo. And if you know enough about it, North American Rockwell was the company that built, the Saturn rockets and all the capsules for like the Gemini program and the Apollo and the space shuttle era, the payload bay doors and several other components were built right in Tulsa. When Boeing was in Tulsa, they built a lot of the components for the International Space Station. And so, unless you're really working in that, you don't know about those things. What we want to do is we want to inspire these children and say, hey, look at all this stuff that happened right here. And it's so easy for you to get involved, follow these pathways, keep this workforce really strong, because the stronger your workforce, the more companies will bring their businesses into the state. And we're seeing that now. The state is really gearing up, the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission and the ACES program. They're just really knocking it out of the park with economic development. You see new aeronautical companies popping up and moving into the state all the time. So, that's what we're about. We want to inspire kids to follow STEM careers and, keep that workforce career pipeline, really flowing.
From what I'm seeing, it looks like about 60% of your visitors to the museum are actually kids. They're college students or younger. Is that a trend that you're still seeing? And is that on purpose, or is that just the mix that comes through the doors?
No, that's absolutely on purpose. We're following our mission, and our mission is to inspire that science-based learning through discovery while, celebrating Oklahoma history. So, our vision is to inspire, educate, preserve. And, that's what we're doing. And so we have a fabulous field trip STEM education program that is sponsored heavily by several local foundations. And what we do is we make those field trips accessible. We cover all the costs for those field trips, and we even reimburse a lot of different school districts for their school bus costs. We don't want any barriers to be in the way to prevent these kids from coming in. And so when they walk through our doors, they are involved in a museum tour. They have classroom STEM activities. They may go up into MD-80, which is a retired American aircraft that was donated to the museum years ago. And it's a discovery center. It's fabulous. And we have that fabulous planetarium. People really need to come out and check it out. Our planetarium has the slanted theater seating and 110 really comfortable theater seats. And it has a full 360 dome. It's 50 feet wide, 25 feet tall. And we have a $250,000 laser projection system. And it is phenomenal. You watching these things, you feel like you are traveling through space. And our planetarium manager, his name is Brian Kyle. He is fabulous. He does these live star tours, and it's just an experience. If people really want those experiences, this is definitely one.
Well, I'll tell you an experience I had in a planetarium in 1994. I went to an aerospace laser light show. If you can top that, then you get my money. I'm just saying. It wasn't quite the Pink Floyd experience that everybody talked about, but I got to see Love in an Elevator with lasers. So I'm just saying, kids, you're missing out.
There's actually something that's coming our way. We don't have a launch date yet, but we're working with the developer, and there's a program called Mesoamerica, and it's basically a kaleidoscope of art set to Grammy award-winning music, and we're fixing to bring that to the planetarium. Yeah, it's going to be fabulous. The laser shows are great, but there's really nothing like sitting back and traveling to Mars, and then having basically a tour guide there taking you through the sky and then pulling these giant nebulas up. You look out in the sky and it's just a little dot, and then they zoom that in and you see how fabulous it is. Someone that's just highly educated, that's telling you all these wonderful facts about the universe. I mean, you walk away with the greatest feeling and knowing that you've learned something, and there's nothing more inspirational than actually feeling like you're there. And our planetarium is such a gem. People pop the question all the time there. People use it for weddings. We have 3 and 4 piece music ensembles. We do, it's just a fabulous place. People have their corporate parties there in the lobby, and then they'll go and they'll bring all their employees and have their corporate dinner and then have a show. So it's really a neat facility. We're so blessed to have it.
So, Tonya, I'm sorry, I know you can't tell. We both sound young over the microphone, but we're 80s kids. And I noticed that you have an F-14 Tomcat. Now, the first thing that comes to mind is my passion for aerospace was born through Tom Cruise. And
are you saying that you have the need for speed?
I do have the need, and at my age, I need as much speed as I can because I'm 43 with a 5-month-old. So we're not hitting 8 Gs on a daily basis. But you have an F-14 Tomcat. Look, I need to know, how did you get that?
And does Tom Cruise sit in it?
Yeah, he flew it in himself. No, not really.
He can. The dude can do anything. He really can.
I think he's been taking flight lessons and learning how to fly those things. Until you see one up close like that, you have no idea how large they really are. And the fact that they could go Mach 2.5, it just blows my mind. We have this. It's a centerpiece in our exhibit hall. We've got stairs and a platform where you can actually go up the stairs and look down into the cockpit.
Oh, cool.
And it's just a beautiful, beautiful aircraft. It's on loan from the Navy and from the Naval Museum. We're just so lucky to have it. It's so beautiful. We also have a Huey helicopter on loan from the Army Museum. Wow. And it's absolutely beautiful too. We actually had some Vietnam Huey helicopter crew, our volunteers that came in and helped repaint it and make sure that she's current. And last week I actually got to speak to one of the original crew from that particular helicopter from the Vietnam War, and he's going through his collection and he's finding pictures. He says he has a picture of the crew chief painting the name on the nose arch, and it's called the Velvet Underground, which was a music band.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, that's so freaking cool.
So I'm telling you, it's the coolest job ever. You never know who's going to walk in the door. The pilot that actually flew the Tomcat in for its last flight, they flew it in. They had a crew show up to decommission it, and then they towed it over to the museum and handed it over to us. And that particular pilot, he's retired now. He lives in Bartlesville. So, it's just a small world, and we have so much talent in Oklahoma, and there's so much more talent to be had. One of the things that we're going to try to do is expand. NASA has given us the very last piece of shuttle training equipment, and it's called a crew compartment trainer. And it's the entire nose, full-size nose, with the crew compartment of the shuttle.
Wow.
And it's down at Houston at Johnson Space Center. The thing is too big to truck. We're going to have to either fly it up in the guppy or bring it up on a barge. Oklahoma astronaut John Harrington's already told me, he says, I want to ride on the barge and come up with it. I said, it's a 3-week journey. He says, I don't care. So that should be pretty exciting because, John Harrington is one of the Oklahoma astronauts who served in the shuttle program. And we're actually going to feature a part of the exhibition on STS-113, which was the mission where John Harrington was a mission specialist, and he went up in the space shuttle and actually assembled one of the International Space Station trusses that was cargoed up inside the space shuttle. And so another piece that we're getting is actually one of those trusses. And believe it or not, the trusses were built in Tulsa by Boeing. So that is amazing. We're going to have an Oklahoma astronaut, and we're going to tell the story of his mission where he took a piece of equipment up that was built in Tulsa on the shuttle, who had many, many components that were also built in Tulsa. So we have a huge Oklahoma connection. And one of the things, Oklahoma has a lot of astronauts, not the most, but we are the only state to have an astronaut fly in every single mission program. We had Gordon Cooper, who flew in the Mercury program. We had General Stafford, who flew in the Gemini program, Apollo program, on Apollo Soyuz. We had Stuart Roosa from Claremore, who was in Apollo 14. We had Owen Garriott and Bill Pogue. And, Owen Garriott was from Enid and Bill Pogue was from Tulsa. He was born in Okemah. And so, we had those two in Skylab. And then Owen Garriott also was in the shuttle missions along with Shannon Lucid and John Harrington. So we have this, really great story that we're going to be able to tell when we get our expansion about man's exploration and space exploration and, how it's all connected to Oklahoma, because there's a lot of connections there. We launched an Apollo exhibition last year. 2 of Buzz Aldrin's nieces live right in Tulsa, and they came and represented him. So it's pretty fabulous.
Well, I would talk to Stafford last year sometime and found out some really cool stuff. And what I didn't know is Stafford was actually a part of the original Top Gun program, and it flew over Area 51. I'm like, that's too cool. So, yeah, I mean, what a small world. And when you think about big picture, Oklahoma, I think people from the outside naturally think it's, the lone prairie, and it's what's it, dust and mud and gold and belt buckles, and it's not. There's so much more technologically. I mean, we've been pioneers of so many different things. And I just think, especially in the aerospace, I think as an Oklahoman, unless you're dialed in, you only think of Tinker, you think of FAA, you think of Will Rogers, just the basics. But when you start to really kind of do a deep dive, like you said, Gordon Cooper, he's a Shawnee guy. You know what I mean? These are small town boys doing really big things, and unless you know, you don't know. And that's what I love about this show is you turn over so many rocks and find out so many cool things.
Well, and the neat thing about Oklahoma, I'm an educator. I came from the education background. Is we have a lot of really great opportunities for kids here, and they can get an education, they can get certification, they can get training right here, and they don't have to have any student debt if they will simply, just make a plan and stick to it. With the Oklahoma's Promise program, with our career tech system, which is fabulous. Our state universities are amazing. And, our state universities, a lot of them now have these fantastic aerospace programs. Everywhere you turn around, there's opportunity everywhere, no matter where you live in the state. And, the kids and their parents, they really need to do their homework and study up on these things, because there's no reason to leave this state for education, and there's no reason to leave this state for work. There's plenty here. Every day, I talk to, I have a fabulous board at the Aerospace Museum, and a lot of our board members come from these fantastic aerospace companies. And I talk to them all the time, and they're like, gosh, we can't find enough, mechanics, and we can't find enough engineers, and we can't find enough this or that. They're reaching down into, even the high schools. Okmulgee High School is starting an aviation high school, which is fabulous. And, Covington Aircraft is down at Okmulgee, and, they do the Pratt & Whitney engine work. And there's just so many great things in this state, and people don't realize it. Just to step back and take a moment and look at it. One of our board members that just passed away recently, Dr. Ray Booker, he founded a company called Aeromet, and, he developed the first drone technology, and it was called the Aura, A-U-R-A, and we've got it hanging in a roof of our in the exhibit hall. And, the things that Dr. Booker did, some of those things are still being used today in the country's defense. People just don't know these things. And I read the AIA magazine. I get an alert every day in my email, and I read it, and it's just fabulous watching all these companies getting these contracts to do this, to do that. It's just amazing. You have no idea. Like, for example, there's a company in Tulsa that is doing work on a spacecraft for Blue Origin. They're the ones that are going to do the commercial, you can pay your way and go up into space. There's all kinds of things going on all around you. One of the things about the aviation industry is aviation people talk to aviation people, and It's a little bit of a bubble. It's hard to really know what's going on unless you really take the effort to look into it.
Well, what I like about, we've been fortunate over the last few years to have major technological companies, not just Amazon Prime, but Tesla, who, Elon Musk launched the SpaceX program, getting kind of fanboys of space, air and space, getting back involved in, and especially when Oklahoma's we're in contention for major players in those industries. I think it's fantastic. And I think what you're doing, not just running a museum where people come in and look at pictures and, might get to push a button that works or it's out of order. You've got a lot of things kind of going down the list of things that you can do that I think helps kind of, grease those gears and get people interested in the industry. I mean, you've got like the Space Maneuver Unit, a simulated wind tunnel. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of the interactive exhibits that you guys have that kind of help push that a little bit?
Absolutely, and we're working harder to have more and more. We have a new curator. His name's Alex London, and he's got a bachelor's degree in history and 2 master's degree, 1 master's degree in history, 1 master's degree in museum studies, and he's fabulous. I mean, he's got all that youthful energy, and he is really doing some great things with our collection and our artifacts and making those plans. We're working on developing that strategic plan, renewing our strategic plan, becoming accredited by American Museum Association. That AMA accreditation is so important. Right now, he has a team of interns working to digitize our collection. And what that means is we have about 500,000 objects at our museum. We have so many of them in storage or in boxes because they're too fragile or we don't have the space or whatever reason, but they're in storage. And we need to be able to share those. And so by digitizing them, getting the imaging and the information and then putting it out there where people from anywhere in the world can visit our collection and see, do research, things like that. That's really important. That's an important aspect of being a museum. We have a hot air balloon exhibit that's really cool. It's got 3 giant screens. You pull on the strings to either rise or to lower. And then there's a target, and it can kind of tell by the amount of fuel and which wind current. It's really cool. It's interactive, and you try to land on the X over on the trees on the other side. And I can't do it. I have I've tried it about 10 times, and then you have little kids walk up and do it the first time. The gem of our museum, though, is our group of volunteers. We have about 45 volunteers that most are all retired, and they either retired from like American Airlines or from the military, and they bring with them a lifetime of experience, adventures. They're just fascinating. And when they take people on tours, they share with them just the most interesting things. And I just love to listen. And one of the things I like to do is when I see a group of kids come in, 5th grade is really like one of the best ages. I will go through the back and I will come out into the exhibit hall because I want to see the look on their face. And they walk in and you see the bright, wide eyes and they're like, wow. And they're looking up and looking all around and they're just trying to take it all in. And that's that moment of inspiration. It's very hard to measure inspiration. If you think about, what inspired you in your life, you can look back through your life and you can definitely pinpoint those moments, right? But when you're in the moment, you don't know exactly. You can't walk out and go, okay, that inspired me to change my life. You don't know that. Bill Pogue, before he passed away, he was an honorary board member at the museum, and he gave us a ton of things. He gave us his flight suit that he wore on Skylab. We have his several flown objects that he took up in space with him. One of his relatives told us, they said, they had an uncle who had been in the Navy, and he would bring his star maps, and he would unroll them, and they'd go outside, and after about 10 minutes, the rest of the kids got bored, and they would go back inside, but not Bill. He said Bill and his uncle would stay outside all night long, looking at the star maps, and just, so if you think about it, and think about all the things that Bill accomplished in his life, and it might have been inspired by that one night. You just don't know. And so what we try to do is we try to impress on the kids when they're there as many touch points of inspiration that we can. And it might be the F-14 Tomcat. It might be that shiny, beautiful Spartan airplane. Who knows? It might be that hot air balloon. We have an exhibit that actually simulates a space shuttle launch. And so they get to click the buttons, they get to do the countdown, and then we have a 1/26th replica that actually goes up. And it's really cool. We have a full-size mock-up, high-fidelity mock-up of an Apollo capsule upstairs that General Stafford gave to us from his museum. It was a beautiful gift, and people walk in and they're like, wow, I can't believe 3 people lived in this for that many days, because it's really small when you think about it. But until you get up close like that and interact and listen to the stories, it brings it to life. It really does.
So, Tonya, you've got this big expansion coming up with the NASA equipment. I'm going to make one small suggestion. from the guys over at the OnlyinOKShow. When you're setting everything back up, if you'll put the Tomcat inverted over top of the MiG,
that's
so that we can take pictures and such from inside.
Because that's what he does. He inverts. He inverts. Do you remember that?
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes, it would.
God, I would die. I would absolutely die. That'd be the only type I've been an introvert, but inverted, never inverted.
So, Tonya, you guys have some restrictions on days and times that you guys are open and available for tours and such. Can you kind of touch base on what we've got going on right now with that?
We're currently closed to the public Monday through Thursday. We're open to the public on Fridays and Saturdays. So what we've done is we're working with some of the schools, the local schools in our area, to provide a place for students to actually come to the museum and get tutoring for their distant learning. So Tulsa Public Schools are doing distant learning all the way into the end of October. We got some phone calls and we started thinking we had to decrease our hours just to cut back on costs because of the COVID-19 pandemic situation. But we thought, while we're closed Monday through Thursday to the public, there's no reason why kids couldn't come here and get help, especially for the ones that the parents need to go back to work.
Sure.
That's what we're doing Monday through Thursday. We're doing what we're calling an Academy of STEM Explorers. So we help the kids with the requirements that they need to fulfill with their teachers, distant learning on their Chromebooks. And then when they have completed that and they've got some extra time, we're doing STEM activities. We're doing shows in the planetarium. They're getting the live tour, star tours. And so we're showing them how much fun STEM can be and how much fun it is to be at the museum, encouraging them and helping them with their lessons.
That's amazing.
So that's what we're doing Monday through Thursday. And we also have a newly renovated flight lab. So our flight lab has 10 computers set up to be aircraft simulators. That's something else that the kids will be able to do. We've got a set of 3D printers. They're going to learn how to do that. It's just pretty amazing. We have a lot of really great things to offer families.
Now, Tonya.
And so,
No, I'm sorry. You keep saying something and you're kind of rubbing me the wrong way. You keep saying kids. Okay? I might want to do it. I might want to take part in said activities. Is this just for kids? It sounds like we're trying to encourage. Yeah, I'm great with let's encourage the youth of America to get in a cockpit. But how about a guy that's been dreaming of doing it for 25 years? Okay, what about that guy?
Absolutely. So you can be a kid of any age to come out and enjoy these things. The flight lab actually there's 2 of them that are set up to fly aircraft that might have 4 engines. So it's got the double set of throttle controls. So, we have some of the American Airlines pilots. They'll drop by and just, practice it out. The Spartan School of Aviation, they come over all the time and they'll use the flight lab, and their professors do different tours and different activities inside because we've got Pratt & Whitney engines that are mounted. We have 3 Spartan airplanes. So, we kind of have this really great Spartan connection and the Spartan planes and the history. So, they come over a lot too, and they're all adults. People go back to school to get their A&P certificate at any age, and so it's wonderful to see that variety of age. A lot of times when I say kids, it's kids at heart. No age requirement.
Well, I will tell you, this is the true story. When I was a kid, you remember the zip-up one-piece snowsuits that they had for kids back when we had a winter?
Yes.
I have one that's a NASA suit.
Ooh.
No, I'm serious. It says NASA on it. It's got the patches. I don't think I could squeeze in it. I don't think I could probably fit in a flight, an airman suit, but I'm going to show up ready. With my toy plane and Harley dragging me with a leash, because I'll need a harness because I won't want to sit still. But this just sounds like an absolute blast. And what I like about, again, when people think museums, I think most people think, and over here is the thing, and if you look behind you, there's the water fountain. I like that your energy level's high. You're excited about it. When you're excited, it makes me excited. You have no idea how. If I could take off right now, I'd be in full.
Gosh.
Yeah,
it is the coolest thing. And so, a lot of times if I'm available and people come through, I'm like, hey, do you want to see something cool? You know, and we'll take groups up into the collection. I'm like, hey, look at this box. This is cool. You know, we got World War II bomber jackets that people have donated. And I mean, it's just the coolest place to be. It really is. No matter how long I've been there and how many times I walk around, I always find something that I haven't seen before. And I'm like, oh, that is really unique. The other cool thing about our museum is we have these really awesome events. An example of one of those is October 23rd and 24th. We have a B-17 flying in called Yankee Lady. She is a beautiful warbird, and she's going to fly in for a couple of days, and people can actually buy rides and go up in a B-17 for a flight.
Oh, my God!
And so over the last 30 years, you know, we've had in B-24s, we've had the B-29, we've had the B-25s, we've had Stearmans, we've had, P-51s. We've had a lot of different things, but this is the first time we've had a B-17 in a few years. So we're really excited about that. And when people come out and pay admission, that includes a cockpit tour. So they can go out to the plane, crawl up in the plane, look around and see what it was like to actually be inside the plane. And then if people want to buy a ride, they give rides several times during the day. So that's really exciting. And then on the 23rd, which is a Friday night, we're doing a 21 and up event in the Planetarium where they get a nighttime, scary, creepy cockpit tour of the B-17. And they're going to get to watch Beetlejuice in the Planetarium.
That's cool.
I was actually going to ask about real, like, cinematic movies in the Planetarium. If that's something you ever did. But I was scared to ask.
Yeah, they're not full dome, but they're projected onto the screen and they look great. They're not the full 360 dome, but it's still a lot of fun. And we're doing Beetlejuice, and it's a 21 and up event. So there'll be snacks, and they can go out in the dark, out on the runway, on the run-up area right outside our gate, and go look at the B-17 in the dark. I mean, it's going to be so cool. Do a flashlight tour. And then the following week on Halloween, we're doing Trunk or Treat. Green Country Classic Mustang Car Club. They're going to bring out their cars, and they decorate their trunks, and they have all their trunks up, and the kids can go around and do trick-or-treating on the trunks, and it'll be so much fun.
That sounds awesome. And you said that's on Halloween night? Halloween night?
I'm not looking at the calendar right now. I believe it's Saturday.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm still stuck in... I'm still stuck in the B-17. What are you guys talking about? You said...
Well, in December, we fly Santa Claus in on a helicopter, and we call it Santa Fly-In.
Stop it.
Yes,
awesome.
We've done it every year for a long time. It's so much fun. The kids get to go out. Santa Claus lands in a helicopter, and he comes inside and visits with the kids and finds out what they want for Christmas. So we have a lot of fun at the museum. I'm not going to lie. And guess what is going to happen next April? This is so much fun. So next April 10th, our Aviator Ball, which is our annual gala, it's going to be Apollo and wine, and we're going to be celebrating Apollo 13 and Apollo 14.
Oh, cool.
Fred Hayes and Jim Lovell from Apollo 13 are going to come if everything is safe for them to get out and about with the coronavirus. General Stafford's planning on coming. Charlie Duke's planning on coming. We have a maybe from Gene Kranz. It's just going to be fabulous.
Houston, we don't have a problem. I'm just saying.
we don't have a problem. There's going to be lots of wine, and we're going to go pop a cork to the moon and toast the moon. And so it's just going to be great.
Wow. I'm sorry.
We have so many fun things that we do at the museum.
Tonya, will you be my friend on Facebook? No, I mean, this is, I can't say enough. This is everything to me. Like, I'm going to be tripping kids trying to get to the cockpit of that B-17. I'm just right up front. I'm going to tell you right now. There's going to be a major trip hazard.
Both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans, and they're both gone now. But I was very proud of everything that they did. And It wasn't until I got older till I really realized their sacrifice. You know, my paternal grandfather was an underwater welder and an underwater diver in the Pacific.
Man, that's so cool.
And my maternal grandfather was in the 45th Infantry here from Oklahoma, and he was in the Normandy invasion. You know, I really didn't understand their sacrifice and maybe some of the ways that they were. And I do now.
Yes.
And when we have these Rosie the Riveters that walk in our door, and we have these World War II veterans and these Korean veterans and Vietnam veterans. When they come in, what we do is so meaningful to their lives and to their family. I mean, it really is meaningful. So, you know, we want to inspire kids to dream, but we also really cherish and honor the sacrifices, because so much of it is tied to aviation. You know, the veterans, oh my gosh, I have such a soft place in my heart for them. And when they come in, and so many of our volunteers are veterans, and it's just fabulous. I can't even begin to tell you how touching it is and how special it is.
Well, even veterans that relied on the flying fortress, you know, the ground support, air support. I was in the work that I do now. I deal with the public a lot, so I encounter all kinds of different people. And I met a man one time he was a Marine from head to toe. We got to talk, and he asked if I was in the service. I said it was a missed opportunity. I meant to go in the Marines. It's a long story, but we got to talking. He says, "Have you ever heard of the chosen few?" I said, "I have." He goes, "I was one of them," and he told me the story about them marching across Korea. He's 90-something years old. The point is, that generation, when they say that was America's generation, there's not a question in my mind. You know what I mean? Those storytellers. I know what you mean. Those storytellers are those voices are silencing every day, and it's up to people like you, and it's up to people like me to continue to tell those stories, because history is. We are even at my level, my job, doing this, and definitely what you're doing, we are the purveyors of the message. We deliver the because it's when the historians come back 30 years, 40, 50 years from now, what are they going to find? It's unless they have something to plug it into. You know what I mean?
And museums are we're supposed to be unbiased. Right. We just want to have the artifacts and the history behind it. And so, in fact, we have a great piece. Can I share one exhibit with you?
Absolutely.
So in 1944, July of 1944, the very last B-24 rolled off the assembly line at the Douglas plant in Tulsa. And if you don't know which one the Douglas plant is, it's that giant building on the south end of the Tulsa International Airport, where on one end of it they build school buses now, and the other end is used by Spirit Aerosystems. And that was built just to build warbirds in the 40s. And so the very last B-24 that rolled off the assembly line was paid for by war bonds purchased by the employees and the citizens of Tulsa. So therefore they got to name it, they got to design the nose art and paint it on. So, planes did not leave with nose art. That was something that their crews did. Mm-hmm. Well, this plane did. And it was named the Tulsa American, and it had nose art painted on it. And it had messages and signatures and addresses written all over it, inside and out. So everyone at the factory got to go in and write a message to the young man that would fly that particular aircraft. So the Tulsa American left in July of 1944, and it ended up in Italy. On December 17th of 1944, it took its last flight, and PBS Nova did a documentary over this particular plane called The Last B-24, the Tulsa American. And it came out in 2018, and it is a fabulous documentary. I highly encourage people to watch it. But it left for its last flight on December 17th, which was one of the largest Allied air raids on Germany. And on their way to bomb, they were going to bomb some fuel factories and other things like that. They were, so many airplanes in the sky that day. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that happened is there was a huge solar flare. So, basically radio communication was not very good that day. Plus there was a lot of clouds. So being able to fly by visual was tough. The radios weren't working the greatest. So there were some barriers that day. But the B-24, the Tulsa American, was in the lead formation. They would travel four to what they called a box. Mm-hmm. And then they would have several formations of fours of boxes in a squadron. And so they were flying, and Tulsa American was in point on that particular group. And the pilot was Eugene Ford. And the Germans intercepted a radio communication for them to pull up the belly gunner turret to save fuel. Well, when they did that, that made them very vulnerable because they didn't have any defense. And so the Germans attacked from the bottom, and the Tulsa American sustained some damage to the fuel tanks, to one of the engines, and to the hydraulics. And so the bomb bay doors were open. They couldn't close them. So they left the formation, and according to the survivors, there was some discussions about whether or not to bail out, what to do, and they decided not to bail out over occupied area. And so they all decided that they were going to try to fly back to a little island called Vis, V-I-S, off the coast of Croatia. There was emergency landing strip there. And so they dropped their bombs on another target, and they headed towards Vis. They made it, and they made a couple of passes over the airstrip trying to hand crank down the landing gear. And when they came in for their last approach to land, they ran out of fuel and crashed into the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Croatia. Upon impact, those B-24s would break in half and turn and flip upside down. 7 of the 10 crew members actually survived, and we've got video documentaries of them, but 3 of the crew members did not, and one of them was the pilot Eugene Ford. So the Department of Defense has a program where they go out and they try to recover the lost soldiers. Mm-hmm. And so Eugene Ford's the documentary, the last B-24, has the part where Eugene Ford was recovered and brought back to Arlington National Cemetery on December 4th of 2018 and given a full honors burial. It was a really interesting story. He had already fulfilled all of his flight missions and got to come home, but he didn't really want to stay. He felt like he needed to be back there. And so when he decided to go back, he left a young wife with a baby girl and a baby boy on the way. And, he didn't come home, and the baby boy never met his dad and kind of had a tough time with it. He knew he wanted to be a pilot like his dad. And so he was a decorated heroic pilot in Vietnam, but then later he took his own life on his dad's birthday. So his sister decided to, have her father's remains and her brother's remains mixed together and buried there at Arlington National Cemetery because that's the first time they've ever been together. So in honor of this story and in all of the crewmen of the B-24, the Tulsa American, we have a fabulous exhibit at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. The real Tulsa American is still at the bottom of the Adriatic Ocean, but we had a mock-up made. It's a fiberglass mock-up. It's beautiful, has the artwork on it, and we have about a 5-minute virtual reality experience where you put the goggles on, and for a moment, it tells you the whole story. And for a moment, you're in the cockpit of the Tulsa American on that day. And it's just fabulous. It's a story that takes you back, to the mindset of these young men. Absolutely. The war effort, the industrial war effort, the industrial machine that America became. It's a fabulous story. And so anybody that comes to our museum, they definitely need to spend some time looking at the Tulsa American exhibit. When you walk in, you won't miss it. It looks like there's half of a B-24 in the back of the room. It's just incredible. And we also, part of that, because it was built in the Douglas factory, we also have the Douglas Jeep. And for anybody that worked in the Douglas factory from about after World War II, late 1940s, all the way to when they closed the factory in 1994, any dignitaries that came to the factory would ride in this little blue Jeep. They had modified it and it has 2 bench seats in the back, and it's just called the Douglas Jeep. It's the only one of its kind. And we have it. And so presidents have ridden in it. Secretary of Defense has ridden in it. All dignitaries have ridden in it. And so we've got that there sitting next to the Tulsa American with a giant mural above it that shows the inside of the Douglas plant. So, wow. It's just a really great story.
Yeah, my grandfather, many, many years ago, before he had passed away, would talk candidly about being a mechanic, an aircraft mechanic during World War II. And used to, back in the 80s and I think until the late 90s, maybe early 2000s at the state fairgrounds, they had decommissioned planes in Oklahoma City. You may have seen them, that were kind of set up. I can't remember where it was. And he would talk about I worked on that plane, and it was like a P-51. And he would just kind of go, yep, and he would give the specs on this plane, that plane. And you don't, when you're a kid, you don't think about how cool that is. But when you're looking back, and especially when you talk to somebody like you who's kind of dyed in the wool and knows, those memories kind of flood back. I'm like, that was, again, such a powerful generation. And so many of these, when you say young men, were kids that lied about their age.
Yeah.
You know, you can see when they show pictures, especially of the ship storming Normandy. You look at some of those kids and go, if you're a day over 16, I would be shocked. I mean, so there were so many young men thrust into positions of I just can't even imagine what that would be like in the terror and the horror and the heroism. It's such great stories.
You know, they wanted to protect their homes, and I mean, at that point, you know, America was being attacked on both sides, and the threat was real, and everybody wanted to protect their freedom. And the cool thing about, you know, one of the things I tell people when I'm taking them to the museum, and I'm like, hey, would you take 10 young men between 16 and 20 and turn them loose with your airplane?
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
Right.
And so, you know, think about it. Every crew, if you were 25, you were, you know, the old guy. And so, you know, it was an incredible part of our history. And, you know, we have to honor that. We have to remember that. And, but there's a lot of different ways to learn about it. That's fun and interactive and interesting. You know, by being able to experience the Tulsa American through a virtual reality 3D goggles. I mean, that's fabulous. You know, being able to look down at your hands and you can see your hands grabbing the yoke, and you look over your left shoulder and you can see one of your engines on fire, and you look over to the right and you see the sky full of aircraft. And I mean, it's so realistic. It's just amazing. It puts you in the time and the moment. And, you know, to have those types of tools and technology, and, you know, they're not cheap, you know, for museums to have these interactive pieces. Oh my gosh, you have no idea how much money these things cost. And so, you know, it's important for people to give back to museums too. Whether it's, you know, their time treasure or their talent. You know, if they want to go in and volunteer and give up their time and their talent, or go in and offer to, you know, help fix or help maintain, or, you know, write that check, however much it is. Those things are important to keep these things alive.
So, Tonya, speaking of, I mean, you led right into my next question. If people want to get involved, whether it's their time, like you said, their time or their talent, how can they do that? And also, how can we find out more about you all?
Okay, wonderful. So let's start with how people can get involved. So there's so many ways. I can't even begin to tell you how many ways there are to get involved, because number one, museums have very small staff. And so if someone has, you know, wants to go and just say, hey, I'll answer your phones. Or we've got one volunteer, he doesn't want to interact with people. He says, I really don't, you know, I don't like speaking in front of people, so I don't want to give tours, but I'll help the collections guy. And so he goes upstairs and helps our curator do whatever it needs to be done, whether it's wiping dust off of things, sweeping up, making labels, whatever. He's there to help. You know, I've got volunteers that come in and all they do is wipe off exhibits and, you know, keep things clean. I've got some people that come in and all they want to do is polish the planes. I've got some that come in and they love kids and they want to give the tours. So there's so many different ways. And if you're not able to do those things, and you don't have to be rich to contribute, you know, if a museum had, you know, 200 people that all they gave was $20 a month and just gave it regularly that adds up, and that helps the museum, you know, purchase those interactive machines or to buy, you know, to replace and maintain, you know, maintenance and upkeep is incredibly expensive. You know, there's all kinds of ways. All they have to do is reach out and ask. And almost every museum, just like us, for example, we have an info at tulsamuseum.org or education@tulsamuseum.org. You know, it's easy to send an email, pick up the phone, write a check and put it in the mail, whatever. You know, we do donations online. We take donations in the mail. There's just so many ways to get involved. And to learn more about the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, we have, I think, a pretty great website. We've been working on it really hard the last 2 or 3 years. It's tulsamuseum.org. You can purchase your tickets online. You can make donations online. And Alex is working really hard to get our collection digitized. So hopefully in a very near future, we will have our collection online where people can learn more about the items that we have.
Right.
And, the different, we've got 13 aircraft, I believe, and these are large aircraft. And then we've got a whole lot of small things, little medals and things like that, which, one medal can have such a story behind it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So it's just amazing.
Well, Tonya, once again, thank you so much. When we first, he and I discussed having you all on, I get giddy because I like air and space. I think you've figured that much out, and a lot of it will be put in the outtakes at the end. So stick around to the end of the show. Don't leave until the credits are over. It's like a Marvel movie, only not as expensive to make. But what I will say is this. It can be foreboding. It's a little intimidating, the idea of space and air and planetariums and all these things. But what I like, again, and I'm going to stroke your ego a little bit, you're energetic. You are, you know what I mean? You sell it. I'm all in. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to invert. I'm ready to go full afterburners on this adventure. And in all seriousness, there's a lesson to be learned here. There's so much that people don't know about air and space, and Oklahoma is, like we talked about, is such an environment for that learning experience.
I failed to mention Jim Breinstein. Jim Breinstein is the administrator at NASA now, and he used to be the executive director at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. So I have really big shoes to fill. Yeah.
I think you're doing a bang up job, and I really look forward to what you all have going on in the future. We'd love to have you back on.
Well, I would love you guys to come out and do your podcast at the museum. Wouldn't that be cool? You ought to come.
Cool.
When the B-17 is there, and you could interview people, and there'll probably be some World War II veterans show up, and you could interview them.
That would be super cool. But again, thank you so much for being on the show. Well, you did have to kind of step out for a little bit because you're helping me co-parent on the nights that Mom wants to go have a little bit of taste of freedom, which she came back. She did come back. I wasn't left with a note that said, "Good luck, Chuck. Don't feed him after midnight."
People may not have noticed that I left. Tonya stole the show.
Oh, there's not a question about it. She was running at full throttle.
For starters, everything that I had in my notes to talk to her about, she brought up on her own.
Yeah. Everything. You're just, we have a list, and you kind of highlight on Evernote the things that we need to talk about, and as they're being knocked off the list, you highlight it so we know not to double back to it.
Right.
And it was just like bang, 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 bang. And it's like I think you were in on this part of the conversation. Museum talk. Let's be realistic. Most museums.
No, you can't say that.
Well,
I get where you're going, which is that sometimes museums can be a little dry.
They can be. They're more of an antique display. It's a glass case. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's a placard. But they have a ton of interactive stuff there. But more importantly, if I'm picking someone to be the person that's in charge of telling me all about it, it's got to be Tonya. I mean, great interview. A lot of really cool things happening up there.
I mean, Tulsa's awesome, dude.
Tulsa is awesome. It really is.
I mean, Tonya had mentioned it. Tulsa was known as the oil capital of the world.
Yep.
I still think they technically hold that name as part of their literature and such.
Well, and to be fair, if you go into Osage County at one point, it may still be one of the largest oil producing areas in the world.
Yes, there was a period of time where it was literally the largest in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, they definitely have had some, I'm not saying expendable income, but they can throw money towards industry. And one industry in particular, I think probably number one's oil, and number two, especially after this conversation, aviation is at the top of the list.
It is, but you can go the other route.
Right.
I mean, Tulsa this is a weird one. Tulsa's in the middle of the country,
Uh-huh.
but Tulsa is a port city and one of the biggest in the country,
Mhm.
or one of the biggest inland ports in the country. The Port of Catoosa
Yeah.
runs like a little over 2 million tons of cargo out of there every year.
Right, and they do have a blue whale that swims that port. I don't know if you know that or not.
I don't know if it actually swims the port. It may just actually sit in a
Sit in
small
the-
pond
in a small pond,
Catoosa,
right.
Oklahoma.
Right. It's a blink and if you blink and you miss it. But yes, there's so many things to do up that way. I mean, there really is.
It's a lot of fun, and I'm telling you, if you do the least little bit of research, like I've been doing for the past few hours, one of the things that you'll find out is there are probably 7,000 cabins that you'll want to stay in if you see the pictures.
Oh yeah, especially up around the Grand Lake area. I mean, there's a lot of waterways up there.
No, I agree. It's a lot of fun.
And plus, I mean, I'm sorry, OKC, I love you, but you don't have the center of the universe.
That is true.
I mean, I don't know if it's made up, but I hear tell there's some anomalies that can be had up there. But yeah, Tulsa, cool as hell. I love I'm sorry, I get giddy when it comes to aerospace.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's not a question about it. We had some great conversations, and yeah, definitely if you get a chance to head up that way, we may try to head up that way towards the end of October for that thing. I mean, I just think it might be a non-missable situation.
I kind of feel like it is.
Well, I'll tell you what else isn't a non-missable situation. Our show, if you get a chance, tell everybody you know, download the show. I mean, we are cooking with jet fuel.
Literally.
The numbers don't lie, folks.
Literally, we're cooking with jet fuel. We
Right.
got some while we were at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum.
Yes.
And I don't know how the ribs are going to turn out, but they're cooking right now, and
They're
it smells
low and
hot.
slow. Low and slow.
Well, this is like 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know
Wow.
if it needs to be much lower than that. This has been the Only in OK Show. I'm Harley.
And I'm Brett.
And we're out of here.
Peace.
Well, it's time for another intro. Brett isn't here this week, so it's me. With Harley as the penguin.
You go, TASM. TASM. FM. Dude, I don't like that. I like it when it's kind of screaming in my ear a little bit. And welcome to the show. Today we're headed into the great unknown. I'm just gonna... Ooh. We could do the...
Baby, I love you.
We could do 3, 2, 1. And welcome to the show. We are headed up, and away. Yes, I did it. We're headed to the Aeronautical Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm Brett.
And I'm Harley. It's the Aeronautical Museum
I
now?
thought it was Aeronautical Museum. It's not?
It's the
Space.
Tulsa Air and Space
Ooh.
Museum.
Aren't they kind of one and the same? But only if it actually says Aeronautical Museum in the title. All right, ready? I totally just went through. I just blew through that one. 3, 2, 1. We're headed into the great unknown. The 80s did two things. It made us want us to learn karate and made us want to fly airplanes. No, because this is our third take.
Without me being...
Fine. 3, 2, 1.